Hello, everyone. My name is Javier Diaz. This is my week two assignment submission for COM 263. We are instructed to provide a brief summary of the main idea of the article, which I have chosen Shakespeare in the Bush, as it pertains to certain cultures. And being that I am from Puerto Rico, born and raised here in the United States, but have a heavy family tradition and culture in Puerto Rico on the island itself. We're supposed to be discussing how the article illustrates, per the directions of our assignment, the impact of the worldview on the interpretation of the cultural meanings. In this case, would be Puerto Rican traditions and how they communicate with each other. Now, I am going to try to identify and analyze one ethnocentric bias within the article, because considering how worldview shaped the author's perception of the study culture. And also, I'm going to try to reflect on how the story challenges the notion that one's culture values are normal or the best. I'm going to try to also consider the specific unique norm and traditions in our own culture, specifically with Puerto Rico, how it might be perceived differently by an outsider based on our worldview. Propose a practice for communication across cultures by incorporating insights on how worldview and perception influence interacts, supported by at least one example from the article. The After a while, I read it, numerous times to kind of get the gist of what the article was saying. The article focused on the Tiv, uh, I guess you could say, tribe of West Africa, and it lessons across cultural understanding and also resonated with Puerto Rican culture as far as I was concerned, based on how I grew up, where traditions and communication styles have unique meanings and rooted in local history and values. Now, one of the things I also wanted to kind of start off by the main idea of Puerto Rican culture, as far as the article is concerned, is the article's main idea is that the cultural narratives and traditions are interpreted differently depending on the worldview. For Puerto Rican culture, this suggests that stories, rituals, and customs, such as gatherings with family, music that we may listen to, religious practices, are embedded with meaning that may not fully translate to the outside cultural context. Now, just as the Tiv tribe reinterpreted Hamlet based on their customs and beliefs, now Bohannon learned that even universal themes are filtered through local perspectives and challenging their initial belief in universal interpretation. Now, a lot of interpretations can mean a wide variety of things, like, worldview interpretations of traditions, ethnocentric biases of worldview. Bohannon's experience demonstrated that the worldview powerfully influenced how traditions are communicated and understood. So the Tiv elders used their cultural framework to reinterpret Hamlet. So they basically took what was told to them based on the story of Hamlet that Laura tried to basically tell them about the actual story of Hamlet, and they interpreted it in a different way based on how they thought what they basically were getting from the actual story of Hamlet itself. Now, in Puerto Rican contexts, for example, like, musical improvisation or extended family networks might be interpreted as loud or chaotic, especially salsa music. Salsa music can vary, and I'm a big proponent of salsa music. I've grown up with it my entire life. My father is in a salsa band, has been in bands, all the way through my childhood. But by outsiders, while locals of these behaviors express warmth and solidarity rooted into their history. So, for those who grew up with, salsa or even merengue, which merengue is normally was derived through Dominican culture, but just the same, Puerto Ricans love merengue music and salsa music. Now, with specifically to like ethnocentric biases and worldview based on the parameters of our assignment, um, I guess you could say that an ethnocentric bias is Bohannon's initial conviction that Hamlet's meaning is self evident and universally acceptable. Because she's from the West, her background shapes her perception, causing her to overlook how deeply cultures frame experiences based on what they've been through and how they interpret certain things that you're trying to tell them. For instance, the only time that the Tiv interpreted the correct mirrors that Bohannon was trying to tell them is by their own cultural bias, demonstrating ethnocentric is not elusive to anyone in worldview. Now, the challenge to cultural values that we see in every culture basically relies on that we refute the notion that one's culture's values are the best or normal. Because that's basically a lot of times that you grow up with certain things that you grow up with, you think that it's normal. Sometimes people may think that it's not normal and may be a little weird. As I mentioned earlier about the music with Latino culture, not just with Puerto Rico, with Latino culture, our music can be um, taken as very loud and annoying and chaotic. One of the things that you know is similar in a lot of cultures is there is a thing called parrandas, which Puerto Ricans tend to do and on the island. They don't really do it so much in the city, in New York City, where I grew up, because you know the 80s were very rough, and then so in the 90s. So, and I happened to live in a really bad neighborhood, so not a lot of people did this. But in Puerto Rico, parandas is basically fosters a community where you know during Christmas time, they would go, from house to house, singing music and trying to get everybody into the spirit of Christmas. Where you can consider that, Christmas caroling. A lot of people do that. Going house to house. Sometimes you see it in a lot of movies. People caroling, going house to house, and a lot of times you would see that in certain areas, like a main square. You see Christmas caroling, and as far as the actual Shakespeare in the Bush article, it offers lasting insights into how cultural and worldview shapes meaning, interpretation, and interaction. Certain principles are vital and for respect and effective communication across normal cultures, either through where they live, and specifically in my case, with Puerto Rico traditions. So thank you so very much for allowing me to be able to go over this week's assignment, uh, basically correlating Shakespeare in the Bush by Laura Brennan, as far as what Puerto Rican culture is that I've grown up and seen throughout my life. Thank you so very much. Again, I'm Javier Diaz, and you have a great day.